Hello, this is Carl Mackinson. I am here interviewing Majida Ahmad, or how do you prefer to be called?
Just go by M.
I knew you as Megan
Did.
back in the day. Why do you switch your name so much?
I mean, I have a lot of names. I can't really, I can't give out all that information. It just
You think somebody's gonna hack you?
no, I mean, I've changed personalities over time, and
So you have multi-personality disorder.
I didn't say that much. I just said I had different names.
Okay. Does your name mean anything?
It does. It means glorious.
Glorious.
Yeah.
Glorious Ahmad.
Yes.
Does Ahmad mean anything?
It does, but I don't know what it means. It
Okay,
means something. Yeah.
fair enough. Carl means a lot of different things. There's an English word churl, which is like a uncouth person.
Okay.
But then like there was also Carl the Great, like Charlemagne,
Yeah.
who was like the emperor of Western civilization in whatever year, like a long time ago. Um, yeah, names are funny. They can have meanings. I guess they can change over time. My sibling changed their name when they became trans.
Yeah. I know we talked about this a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to say my name means like glorious peace searching servant or something like that. I don't know. Yeah.
Do you feel like names are destiny?
I think that they can have some attributes that you try to live up to. Yeah.
But do you think that depends on whether you know the meaning, or do you think it's like fate?
I'm not sure, honestly. I think it could go both ways. I think if you know what your name means, then that makes you more likely to take on those attributes. For example, like my brother, his name means fighter, and
Yeah.
he's always been a lot more of, a lot more of a fighting spirit than, say, me.
Yeah.
And he knew that that's what his name was. And actually, my dad stopped calling him by his first name because it meant fighter and like, anger. So
Oh, what is the name?
his name is Mujahid.
Mujahid.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly if it translates to fighter, but it definitely is like warrior or something. It's not a like peaceful, calm name, and he's not a peaceful, calm person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And these are Arabic names?
they're Arabic names. Yep. Yeah.
So you are devoutly Muslim.
I mean, I wouldn't go and say that.
You wouldn't?
I mean, I think that depends on how you define devout. Like, what is a devout person? I mean, I'm pretty sure if you were to compare me to the average devout Muslim, I would look nothing like them.
Hmm. Like in what ways?
As in, I almost never go to mosque, never. I don't wear the head covering,
Yeah.
and I don't do things that like I don't surround myself by with other Muslims or anything like that. So that, and I feel like that's something that's different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you feel at home in a majority Muslim country, or do you feel at home in the US?
I mean, I think I'm like a chameleon. I can feel at home pretty much anywhere.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So for the past few years, you've been a traveling nurse.
Yes.
What are all the places you have worked?
So I started in Connecticut. That was my first job. And then I went from Connecticut to close to the Richmond area, like the DC Richmond area. And then from there, I went to Hawaii, Texas, Maryland, California, Washington, and then South Carolina, and then West Virginia was my last stop.
Wow. So how long would you on average spend at one of these places?
3 months.
3 months.
3 months.
But the pay is pretty good, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's better than if I wasn't doing it, but you have all these added expenses. If you were just staying in one place, you wouldn't have to do like short-term housing and travel costs, moving costs, double, pay for apartments, things like that.
Yeah. So you're originally from Baltimore.
No, I'm
Oh, you're
from
not?
Maryland.
I thought you were.
No,
Where in
no,
Maryland?
Baltimore and Maryland are two different things.
But Baltimore is in Maryland.
Yeah, but it's like New York City and New York.
Yeah,
Totally
that's
different.
true.
Yeah. It's
That's
almost
true.
exactly that.
What do you think the differences are between Maryland, the state, and Baltimore?
I mean, Baltimore has its own culture. It has a very unique history. It's just got so many unique facets that Maryland does not have. So, okay. So for example, I would say that the crime rate in Baltimore is probably higher than the rest of all of Maryland.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say I don't know the statistics or anything, but I would say there's that. And
Okay.
then there's a lot.
So where did you grow up?
I grew up in College Park.
And where's that?
That is about like 20, 25 minutes outside of DC.
Yeah, that's right. It's on the metro, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Which line on the metro is it on?
I want to say it's on the green and red, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. I don't know
Green or
anymore.
red? I don't,
On
yeah.
the line, I don't know. I can't tell you. It's been a long time since I took the metro. It's been a long time since I've lived here.
Yeah, that's fair. And now you're back again.
Yeah, I'm
Are
back
you going to be here for the foreseeable future?
for now,
For now, very non-committal
for today.
for today. But you did just get an apartment.
I did.
How long is your lease for?
Too long.
Too long?
Yeah.
But you're
Yeah.
also you're in school. You're in a nurse practitioner program.
Yeah, but anything less than 3 months is too long.
I guess that's why you were a good travel nurse. How does your dog do with all the moving around?
I mean, she tolerates it. I
Yeah,
can't say she's a big fan, but she tolerates it. She tolerates it.
yeah,
Okay, enough questions about me.
yeah.
It's
Well, you're the
boring.
person. You're the person I'm interviewing.
That's so boring.
Well, we could talk about anything. So we were yesterday on the phone. We were talking about the places where we live.
Yeah, I feel like we should talk about that conversation because there's a lot to say about it. So we
Yeah,
talk about,
we could totally talk about that. So you now live in Baltimore.
yes, I just got here, literally just moved.
You just moved. Are you done in West Virginia?
Yeah, as of today, I'm done.
And as of today, you've moved out?
Yes. Yep, I'm completely a Baltimore resident now.
Okay.
Sounds
And
nuts.
you said you live by the water
Yeah.
in a nice area?
I mean, it's okay.
Okay.
Can't give too many details.
Yeah, that's right. Get stalkers
I mean, not really stalkers, but I like to keep a level of anonymous.
anonymity.
Yeah,
Okay.
keep.
But we were talking about how you said you don't feel welcome there, and I was saying I don't feel welcome where I live.
It's not so much that I don't feel welcome. It's just I definitely, I don't know. I'm definitely in a. I mean, there's. I can tell there's something. I can't quite put my finger on it, but when I walk into a place, like this is the type of situation where when I walk in, they're probably going to follow me around the store and
Yeah.
be watching me. Whereas in lots of other places that I've lived, like in San Francisco, like I'm not the person that they're going to watch. Like they're not even going to pay any attention to me at all. But
Yeah.
here, I feel like, yeah, I feel like I'm the outsider in a way. even though I'm not a minority here.
Yeah, well, you are black.
Yes.
Do you feel this predominantly from white people or also from black people?
No, I don't feel it from Black people. I don't. So, okay, let me explain. I just came from West Virginia where I was absolutely a minority and I kind of stuck out like a sore thumb,
Yeah,
but no one really batted an eyelash. They were just, they might look at me for a second and then they just go about their business. But like here, I'm not a minority. I mean, there's lots and lots and lots of diversity. However, in the specific neighborhood that I'm living in, this is the area that when you go into that store, let's say you're going into Lululemon and they're going to look at you in comparison to another customer and be like, hey, is she going to steal something?
yeah,
Because because I think I'm not a minority and I'm in a very, I guess, wealth divided area,
yeah,
maybe. So I have to question like, are they looking at me like that other person that's literally standing across from me,
yeah,
thinking that we are the same people?
yeah,
We are the same people. However, that person might be doing heroin, that person might not be doing heroin. It's hard to distinguish.
yeah. Where do you think in America, you have experienced the worst racism?
Um, so Baltimore, actually, I've experienced a lot of racism here in Baltimore in various forms. Um, I will say it's more subtle than in other places. So, for example, I was in Sumter, South Carolina, working in the hospital, and I had never seen patients treated that way. But I was in Sumter, South Carolina. Here in Baltimore, I feel like they don't really know how to distinguish who's who. So they just kind of, people just keep to themselves, and it's very segregated within itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I'll give you an example. I remember a couple years back, I was dating this guy, and we went to like a farmer's marketplace together. And people were talking to him. I mean, he was not the same race as me. People were talking to him and didn't even realize that he and I were together. They like were asking us separately and
Yeah.
like trying to eat us separately. And I was like, no, 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 we're together. Like we came in this restaurant like together.
Yeah.
And I've never experienced that per se in any place other than like Baltimore.
Okay. What other countries have you been to?
I've been to Switzerland. I've been to Berlin. I came and visited you.
Yeah, you
Know.
came to visit me in Berlin.
I've been to, let me see, I went to um, Brazil. That was the
When
very
did
first place I traveled to.
when did you go to Brazil?
I went to Brazil back, I want to say in like 2016.
Okay.
It's been a
Brazil is
while.
supposed to be sort of chill about minorities.
So everybody in Brazil was so friendly. Like I can
Yeah.
say it didn't really matter like what you looked like or what you were doing. The culture there, everybody was just welcoming and friendly. I mean, we didn't go into the sketchy neighborhoods or anything like that. We stayed in our group, but still like the staff, the like everybody, like the everybody you ran into was willing to help you, was willing to talk to you, like very, very friendly people.
What experience did you have in Berlin?
Berlin, I mean, Berlin is so diverse.
Yeah.
I mean, the diversity is insane. So I was just another person because there's tons of people. Like I didn't stand out. I didn't like nobody looked at me strange, nothing. I just was another human being. It's pretty
Germans Germans seem to love Black Americans, but they seem to not like as much um Africans?
I mean, it's interesting how you have like different countries that have these like subtle, relationship differences. So, for example, I know that a lot of Africans go to London. And because of that, a lot of Africans, they do their education in London. And so they don't always feel comfortable with African Americans, just because there's, I mean, it's hard to explain, but there's almost like a feeling of African Americans are inferior to Africans
Yeah.
in some of their cultures. And then I'm not even going to get into like the difference in how you're treated based on what your skin color, like the shade of your skin color.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. For example, like if you're, an African that tends to be on the darker side versus an African American person who is on the lighter side.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot to unpack.
Yeah. I didn't know until after undergrad that race is a social construct.
Yeah, we had talked about that a little bit because of the racism that you experienced when you went to Japan.
Yeah, Japan, at least where I was and the time I was there, not, of course, not everyone was like this, but it was the first time I experienced racism being directed at me.
Yeah.
Because Japan is a very isolated country. It's an island country, not just geographically, but also in terms of their ideology and how they conceive of themselves. Um, and I was in a very rural, conservative area. I was the only foreigner for miles. And it's interesting. Like, I remember in high school, I wrote an essay about how affirmative action was reverse racism.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went through undergrad and went to Japan right after undergrad for 2 years. And I, after Japan, I went home with the explicit desire to volunteer on the Obama campaign because I thought he was the best candidate. And, I did some research and I came to understand that race is a social construct. It's hard because there are biological differences between races just in terms of the way they look physically, but the
I
point
mean,
of the point of it being a social construct is like,
those are like phenotypes, like we have
yeah,
different characters, but like you have different characteristics among every different type of person. Um, Whereas from a biological standpoint, they're actually beginning to realize that a lot of the things that they thought were biological differences were actually just skewed data.
yeah,
I'll give you a specific example. There's this thing how in medicine they will test differently for kidney function based on African American kidney function versus the rest of the population. And now they're realizing that kidney function is all the same. Like your kidney function and my kidney function has nothing to do with our different races. It has to do with our diet.
yeah, exactly. But what's interesting is that the reality that you experience as a human being is a product of the interaction of your genes with your environment.
For sure.
So, like, I know, for instance, in the US, Black people have a higher likelihood of hypertension or heart disease. But if you go to Africa, that does not occur there. So you can make the argument that in America, it's probably just like experiencing systemic racism that results in these health disparities.
I mean, it's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of different factors. There's environment, I mean, is there some genetic component? Absolutely. I mean, there can be. But did that genetic component come from years and years of environmental situations?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say.
Yeah, it's interesting. Japan, they with COVID, they initially refused to administer the vaccine because they wanted a study done just on Japanese people.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they didn't accept the trials because they were done on like multiracial people.
Yeah.
And Japan just want because of course Japanese bodies are different.
I mean, all bodies are different.
Yeah, but for them, the Japanese race is unique. So they wanted a study of only Japanese people.
I mean, I can understand where and that's it's a really complicated line because trust me, like when you come into the ER and you've been hit by a bus, it doesn't matter what race you are. Trust
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It does not. Not to sound morbid or anything, but I mean, are there differences? Yes. Are they important for testing and for learning about human beings and for populations and things like that? Absolutely. But you have to be, it's such a slippery slope because then people start to say, well, okay, because we're this, we're not like that.
Yeah.
And those people are different from us.
Yeah.
And yet, at the end of the day, the differences really don't necessarily matter.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you see it from the biological because you're a nurse.
Yeah.
I see it more just based on experience.
Yeah.
But I'm sure your view is also colored by your own personal experience.
I mean, I think everyone's view is colored by their reality and what they have experienced. I will always say, like, I feel like I had a very unique experience to even my own experience as a Black person because of the fact that my dad had so many unique opportunities that maybe other people didn't have.
Okay.
So we sort of got to exist in a different bubble than many other people, perhaps.
Yeah.
You know, to homeschool. I never went to any high school. I never went to middle school. I was homeschooled up until college. I started taking college credits when I was 15. Um, and all of that was because my dad was like, no, we're going to homeschool them. They're not going to be around other kids.
Yeah, let's talk about that a bit. So what was the motivation for not wanting you to be around other kids?
So my dad, okay, so my dad is originally from Cuba
Yeah.
and he came over to this country. My grandmother is half, oh my gosh, okay, so she is, her dad was half Jewish, half Jamaican, and then her mom was from Venezuela. And she moved to Cuba where she met my grandfather, who was Afro Cuban. And then they had my dad and his brother. My grandmother came to the United States and then sent for the family. And she was able to get a job because she was half Jewish or part Jewish. She was able to get a job working for a Jewish family who then sponsored her to come to the United States.
Okay.
So that in itself, the fact that she worked for a Jewish company, the fact that she, was given sort of different privileges because she got to sort of be, she got to be a colored person or a minority, but not an African American labeled person. So back then, she was able to do a lot of things that other people weren't able to do, which then created a lot of opportunities for my dad. My dad went to some of the top universities in the country
What
because what's that?
where did he go?
So he went to Columbia Law School and then he did like a master's degree at Yale.
Oh wow.
And, yeah, so I mean, obviously he was incredibly smart as well, which
Yeah.
was, he told me the story that when they tested him, he went to a school where he was the only minority at the time in Connecticut, and they tested him with all the other kids, and they thought he cheated because they were like, "There's no way that he could have tested as high as he tested,
Yeah.
being a minority." And so they made him, they like isolated him, they made him feel really bad. They put him in a separate room and tested him again, and he was able to reproduce all of the same exact answers and test off the charts.
Yeah.
And this was like a young little boy who didn't even really speak English as his first language.
Yeah.
And they were just like, so that, I mean, that allowed a lot of opportunities. I mean, he was able to do things that maybe other people at the time didn't have the same opportunity to. And then that's why he decided, no, I'm not going to allow my children to be subjected to that situation. I'm going to homeschool them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did your father meet your mother?
So that's another interesting thing too, because my mom had a lot of opportunities that maybe the average person didn't have. My mom was a professional ballerina.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she was, for her time, she was extremely talented and actually worked. She worked, or she danced at Radio City Music Hall. She went to the Dance Theater of Harlem. She went to the High School of Performing Arts in New York City. So she had a lot of opportunities that maybe the average person wouldn't have either, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. She had,
what were your parents raised Muslim if they had this Jewish background on your father's side?
no. So my dad grew up kind of without a religion. You know, my grandparents were not super religious. And then my mom grew up as Baptist
Okay, and when did they become Muslim?
in the 60s during like the Nation of Islam. And
Yeah,
yeah. Mhm.
that's super interesting. My town, Teaneck, which you have been to, was the first, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was, if not the first, then one of the first towns to voluntarily desegregate its school system.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and that led to the influx of a very large black population,
Yeah.
and it remains a big there remains a big black community in Teaneck, New Jersey to this day. There's also a very large Jewish community, Orthodox Jewish. I think outside of Brooklyn, it's like the largest Hasidic Jewish population outside of Israel.
Oh, wow. That's a huge population.
Yeah, it's really big. Um, so that's the situation I grew up in. But for me, my parents were immigrants from Germany. They came here with nothing. They were basically economic refugees and made their lives here. Um, and then they worked very hard to send me and my younger sibling to private schools,
Mhm.
which was a weird experience having gone to private school from the age of 3 until the end of high school.
So what's interesting is like your parents kind of did the same thing that my grandparents did for my parents, as in they worked really hard and allowed them to go to these, private universities, private, high schools, things like that. And it just, I'm sure you can acknowledge that you grow up around a different group of people.
Yeah, exactly. But it had sort of it I say it inoculated me against seeking out wealth. Like I grew up with a lot of wealthy kids
Yeah.
and I saw what their home lives were like. And there were only a couple wealthy families that had like good home lives. Like for the most part, they had the same problems that anyone else had, if not the money actually making things slightly worse than
Yeah.
being middle class or even working class. My first girlfriend, that I was with from the age of 17 to 21, she was first generation Cuban. Her parents came from Cuba. But she grew up in Patterson, New Jersey, which is like a working class town. And she was definitely working class. But they sent her to Catholic school.
Okay.
Um, but I remember Patterson, and I remember having commonalities with her because we were both the children of immigrants and a certain respect for money, not wanting to waste money, and a certain work ethic as well. Um, Wanting to not be a burden on your family. Um, and then all the cultural similarities of I was raised Catholic. My dad actually was when he was younger, he was a Lutheran pastor before he got his history PhD. Um, but he after he married or before he married my mother, he converted to Catholicism. He had stopped being a Lutheran pastor. Um, so yeah, yeah, it's really interesting. And now you're studying to be a nurse practitioner, and I'm studying to get my PhD again at GW.
Yep. Which is where we met.
We met
And
at GW in
like
2003.
I think so. I don't know. It's a long
It
time.
was it was junior year. I lived in Mitchell junior year, which was the dorm of singles. Everybody had a single, and they
Yeah.
were microscopic.
Yep. You're basically just the size of a closet. But it
Yeah,
was your closet. You didn't have to share your closet with anybody else.
yeah, exactly.
If you wanted to come out of the closet, you could. If you wanted to stay in the closet, you could. It didn't
Yeah,
matter. It was your closet.
exactly. Um, yeah, I had lived in freshman year and sophomore year. I had nice dorms, but
So this is a question I have for you. Sorry not to kind of
go
interrupt
ahead.
you. I um I wonder like what was your experience of undergraduate GW existence? Because I'm sure your experience was very different from mine.
Yeah. Um, well, the first 3 years I was in a long distance relationship, so I would go home like every other weekend.
Okay.
But when I was at GW, it was fine. I mean, my dad died when I was 14 in eighth grade, and then I spent high school not really working very hard because I didn't see the point after he died. Um, but then when I came to undergrad, I got more interested in some of the stuff I was studying, but I had the tools of knowing how to get by in these classes with minimal work.
Yeah.
So I was able to triple major, double minor, and do it in 4 years. I think the credit requirement for graduation was 120, and I had something like 183.
It's a lot.
Yeah, I took 6 classes a semester. I took 3 classes every summer. One
Do
summer I
you feel
took.
like you enjoyed your college experience, like, or did you just spend all of it taking these classes?
No, I think I enjoyed it. I don't think I really took advantage of DC until like my junior or senior year. I didn't really appreciate DC at first because I come from the New York suburbs, and when I think of a city, I think of Manhattan,
Yeah.
and I compare everything to Manhattan. Actually, I had always thought I would settle in my home that I grew up in Teaneck, which is 5 minutes from Manhattan. Um, I always thought I would settle there until I lived in Berlin. Berlin was the first time I imagined I could settle someplace outside of the New York City area.
Yeah.
But I mean, now I'm back here. It's
Yeah.
fine. I know DC. I know the parts that I like. Did I tell I've been thinking about driving Uber.
You told me about that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I got to figure out the car situation.
I mean, you have to have a car.
Yeah, you need insurance and registration in your name, like they're in my mom's name.
So
I
you're
think
saying you can't just like steal a car and then start driving people around?
no,
No?
no.
That was my plan. Like I was gonna just go and like, you know, start picking people up.
Yeah, unfortunately, you can't do that.
No. Okay. All right. Well, then my
Um,
whole plan is ruined. Like, what am I gonna do with my life now?
well, you're being a nurse practitioner.
I mean, when that falls through, or if that falls through, I mean, what am I gonna
Yeah, that's true. You could find some
do?
other gig economy type of thing.
Yeah. How am I gonna pay the bills until I graduate?
I don't know. That's a good question. But nurses and nurse practice, I mean, you make decent money. I don't know.
So it's interesting because one of the reasons that I started traveling is because I found that, well, I wanted to travel, but after a couple of, going to a couple of states, I realized that Maryland is actually one of the lowest paying states for nurses in comparison to how high the cost of living is.
Really?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's really interesting. So why did you settle in Baltimore?
Well, I haven't settled anywhere, but I will say, like, for example, I was in Houston for a while, that I was there for about 2 years, and the cost of living is a lot less than it is here in Baltimore, and
Yeah.
pay for nurses is a lot higher.
Yeah.
So you have not only do you have a lower cost of living, you have a higher pay for nurses there than here in Maryland.
Yeah. In Berlin, the cost of living was a lot better than the New York City area or the DC area.
Yeah.
You could get like a full dinner for like 10, 15 euros and have like a whole nother meal. My rent for like a decent studio was like 700 euros a month in DC when I lived on campus the first year of the PhD. I paid like more than double that.
Yeah.
And groceries were like more than double. Oh, we have less than a minute left.
Any
So
final things that you want to say?
we got to wrap up.
All right.
Um, no, this has been a good conversation. Maybe we could do it again and talk about other things, but I
Sure.
think this has been informative. I'm glad we got the opportunity to do this.
Thanks for chatting. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'll let you. I want to make a podcast out of it also.
Okay. What would we even call it?
I don't, it's, well, the name of this show right now is Carl's Corner. It's just my little corner of the universe.
Nice.
So thank you for being the first inaugural guest on Carl's Corner.
Yep.
And I will let you know if I can stream it or whatever.
Sounds great. Sounds good.
Okay, I have to stop.